Thank you for joining me. My name is Diana Rockwell of Webinars by Rockwell. This video is designed with the administrative professional in mind and the unique job duties and tasks we are expected to do every day. With over 40 years of experience as a secretary, administrative assistant, and executive assistant, I hope my experiences and skill sets can help you excel in your chosen or fallen into profession. I appreciate your choosing to spend the next few minutes with me as we discuss how to deal with a bad boss. If you've been in the workforce for any length of time, you've probably had to deal with a bad boss. In this video, we will discuss the description of the different types of bad bosses and solutions to help deal with one. We've all heard about or seen the movies Horrible Boss, Bad Teacher, and Bad Santa. How about working with one of those personalities every day, 5 days a week, 52 days a year? For how many years? It wears you down, makes you exhausted, kills your creativity and your sense of humor. Bad bosses can be found at every level of management, and they often display the same characteristics. By identifying the type of bad boss, you just might be able to find a way to deal with it, counteract it, or manage your boss. As you go through the 19 traits of bad bosses, keep in mind they were published in 2015 by Kevin Sheridan on the ATD, which stands for Association for Talented Developer website. This list will not only help you realize if you are working for a bad boss, but will allow you to reflect on whether you possess any of these traits yourself. So let's go through the 19 traits. The narcissist is all about me, me, me. Terrible bosses are endlessly self-centered. Everything is about them and not the people they manage or the company they work for or what is going on with their employees' personal lives. It is never about the team, but rather all about how good the boss looks. Conversely, great bosses lead with integrity, honesty, care, and authenticity. The screamer. One of my last bosses believed there was a direct correlation between how loud he yelled and revenue growth. I can laugh about this now, but I no longer report to him. Now remember, this was not written by me. This was written by Kevin Sheridan. Sadly, this trait pervaded the workplace. Earlier this year, I saw a LinkedIn post asking whether it was acceptable to yell at work. And shockingly, more than 40% of the approximately 10,000 comments defended screaming as an acceptable management behavior. Bully. Bullies manage through fear and intimidation. Often a screamer as well, these people do not give guidance, they bully. They also create a culture of distrust, nervousness, and fear. Under their thumb, employees are worried about losing their jobs. Office politics begin to dominate employee performance. This bullying often includes lying about people behind their backs and leading active campaigns to turn friends into workplace enemies. Unapologetic. Great managers are quick to realize their missteps or mistakes and offer an apology. Bad bosses never realize their egregious behavior and certainly never atone or apologize for it. The suck up. How many times have you heard the term kiss ass in your workplace? Bad bosses are notorious for spending little time with the people they manage. Instead, they spend their time sucking up to their boss and only trying to look good in their boss's eyes. Poor communicator. Not giving clear instructions is a prominent trait among bad bosses. They frequently guard information and treat it as power. In addition, they often contradict themselves or give conflicting instructions. Their direct reports spend an inordinate amount of time trying to decode or interpret what limited communication was offered. One of my former bosses used to say, "When you get a chance." I quickly learned that actually meant, "Do it now." I finally got to the point where I would just ask him when he needed something and work accordingly. Terrible listener. Bad bosses don't listen, which goes hand in hand with being bad communicators. Worse, they do not even care to appear to listen. Whatever you say, bad bosses hear what they want to hear. In addition, they interrupt constantly, and they're never fully present during interactions with employees. Always right. These bosses have a compulsive need to be right and consistently point out how others are wrong. They can never admit a mistake and say, "I am sorry." Unavailable. Bad managers are rarely available. They are MIA when needed most, especially in times of crisis, when critical decisions need to be made, or in employee solutions that require sensitivity. Never praise or encourage. Quick to criticize and slow to praise. Too many employees of bad bosses report that their managers have not thanked them in years. Given that recognition is the most effective driver of engagement, this is one of the most egregious traits of a bad boss. Blamer. Lacking any personal accountability, these bosses blame everyone else when something goes wrong. They often break the rules for office policies to shift blame onto others. This type of boss leaves direct reports high and dry when it matters most. Unrealistic and demanding. Bad bosses set goals that are both unrealistic and unattainable, often doing so because of trait number 5, the suck up. When these goals are not met, they blame their employees for not achieving them, labeling the employees as weak, lazy, or poor performers. Indecisive. Bad bosses live in fear of themselves, which often leads to decision paralysis. This indecision stems from a boss's fear of making a mistake or simply not having enough basic business intelligence to make the decision. Micromanager. Whatever work you are performing, the micromanager is always looking over your shoulder and second guessing every decision you make. This can be especially frustrating when combining the trait 13, unable to make a decision. Highly controlling micromanagers demand every last bit of information and squelch any opportunity for innovation or creativity. You are to execute orders and report back. Command and control. Tolerate mediocrity and relishes the suck-ups. These bosses care more about whether employees kiss ass than how they perform. They are tolerant of employees who do average or subpar work as long as they suck up and try to make the bad boss look good. Even if it's glaringly apparent that a poor performer must go, that person can remain in the position because of the ability to suck up. Manipulative. Bad bosses are notorious for scheming and manipulating others, either for their own agenda or sometimes just for fun. It's almost like a game to them, and they toy with people as though they were puppets. Sadly, this manipulation results in hurt feelings and an untold amount of wasted energy. Vindictive. Heaven forbid you should ever cross, disagree with, or publicly debate an issue with the bad boss. Questioning this type of boss makes her feel threatened and likely to go after you to make you feel the same way. Even if your motive for questioning your boss was well-intentioned, when you're dealing with a vindictive leader, it is sometimes best, or at least easier, to bite your tongue and protect yourself and your job. Inconsiderate and shaming. Bad bosses are frequently rude and inconsiderate, fond of shaming their employees. They use staff meetings as a forum to belittle or publicly humiliate them. Some of these behaviors are spawned by their own insecurities and fears. Many bosses feel better about themselves when ridiculing others. Take credit for other people's hard work. Ever work really hard on something, spending endless hours trying to deliver great results to your organization, only to discover that your boss has stolen the credit for your hard work? If so, you have a bad boss. Good leaders take pride in their team's accomplishments and go out of their way to make sure higher-ups know who to thank for a job well done. Simply put, taking credit for someone else's work is shameful. Do any of these behaviors sound familiar, either because you've been on the receiving end or because you sometimes exhibit them yourself? If so, you're not alone. No one is perfect, but simply trying harder to be a good boss goes a long way towards boosting employee engagement. What can you do today to be a better boss or colleague? Well, it's certainly clear that there are lots of bad bosses out there, and a lot of them are just not nice people. Anyone relate to someone they work with or used to work with? Or should I say for instead of with? I'm not sure anyone really works with a boss like this. Unfortunately, they are all over the workplace. If you haven't run into one yet, you probably will before you retire. Now that we've seen the traits, the behaviors, and the passive-aggressive nature of these personalities, let's think about how to deal with them. In the ideal world, we would all have fantastic managers, bosses who help us succeed, who make us feel valued, and who were just all around great people. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. But whether the person you work for is a micromanager, has anger management problems, shows favoritism towards one person, or just isn't very competent, you still have to make the best of the situation and get your job done. To help out, we've gathered the best advice from around the web for dealing with a bad boss. Try one or more of these tips to find some common ground with your boss, or at least stay sane until you find a new one. You may want to take this 3-minute quiz. The link is on the screen. It will help you identify if you truly are working in a toxic environment. Here are some steps to take before leaving your job or going to HR with a complaint. Make sure you're dealing with a real bad boss. Before trying to fix your bad boss, make sure you really are dealing with one. Is there a reason for her behavior, or are you being too hard on him or her? Observe your boss for a few days and try to notice how many things she does well versus poorly. When she's doing something, quote, bad, try to imagine the most forgiving reason why it could have occurred. Is it truly her fault, or could it be something out of her control? I think that, in a nutshell, is give them the benefit of the doubt. Identify your boss's motivation. Understanding why your boss does or cares about certain things can give you insight into his or her management style. If the rules are totally out of control, try to figure out your boss's motivation. Maybe it's not that he really cares about how long your lunch break is. He actually cares about how it looks to the other employees and their supervisors. Don't let it affect your work. No matter how bad your boss's behavior, avoid letting it affect your work. You want to stay on good terms with your leaders in the company and keep your job. Don't try to even the score by working slower or taking excessive mental health days or longer lunches. It will only put you further behind in your workload and build a case for your boss to give you the old heave-ho before you're ready to go. Stay one step ahead. Especially when you're dealing with a micromanager, head off your boss's requests by anticipating them and getting things done before they come to you and ask. A great start to halting micromanagement in its tracks is to anticipate the tasks that your manager expects and get them done well ahead of time. If you reply, "I actually already left a draft of your schedule on your desk for your review," enough times, you'll minimize the need for the reminder. They'll realize that you have your responsibilities on track and that they don't need to watch your every move. Set boundaries. Working with someone who seems to have no boundaries means that you have to go ahead and set them yourself. One of the challenges of unlikable people is that they come with equally unlikable behavior, and it's important to learn how to distance yourself from that behavior. As Robert Frost said, good fences make good neighbors. Stop assuming they know everything. Just because someone has a management title doesn't mean that they have all the right answers all the time. I realize that just because someone is in the position of authority doesn't mean he or she knows everything. From that point forward, I stopped assuming the title manager was equivalent to all-knowing. Act as a leader. When dealing with an incompetent boss, sometimes it's best to make some leadership decisions on your own. If you know your area well enough, there's no reason to not go ahead creating and pursuing a direction you know will achieve good results for your company. People who do this are naturally followed by their peers as an informal leader. Management, although maybe not your direct boss, will notice your initiative. Of course, you don't want to do something that undermines the boss, so keep him or her in the loop. Identify triggers. If your boss has anger management problems, identify what triggers their meltdowns and be extra militant about avoiding them. For example, if your editor flips when you misspell a source's name, be sure to double and triple check the notes so that it's correct. And if your boss starts foaming at the mouth if you arrive a moment after 8 a.m., plan to get there at 7:45 every single day. Use tips from couples therapy. When dealing with disagreement, pull on some tenets from couples therapy to work through the issue. Simply repeat back what he said and ask, "Is that what you meant?" This is a standard trick ripped off from couples therapy. If he agrees to your recap, ask him to tell you more about it. When you repeat someone's perspective back to them, you give them a chance to expound and, crucially, to feel heard. Avoid future bad bosses. When interviewing with a new company, do your research ahead of time to make sure you're not getting into another situation with a less than ideal manager. Have coffee or lunch with one of the staffers at the new company. Supposedly, your purpose is to learn general information about the company and its culture. However, use the opportunity to discover as much about your potential boss as possible without appearing creepy, of course. Remember, this is work and not your personal life. Yes, it can be difficult working with someone you dislike on a daily basis. However, remain respectful, polite, and courteous, and with a professional demeanor. If both of you treat each other this way, personal opinion should not enter into it. A related article from the publication The Muse says, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but chances are you're probably have a bad boss at some point in your career. And while it's easy to simply chalk the experience up as a rite of passage and move on, there are actually some pretty valuable lessons you can learn from a lousy manager. After more than 14 years on the job, I've had my fair share of lackluster leaders. But with a little creative interpretation of the situation, I've managed to glean a few lessons from these terrible bosses. Read on for a few easy ways to get some good out of a bad manager. Remember, this is from the publication The Muse. Don't take things personally. This is probably one of the most important lessons in the workplace in general. But I didn't really get it until I had to deal with a terrible boss. I was working in a small team and my boss was rarely in the office. That meant that whenever he did show up, he had a few weeks worth of griping to do and pile on me for work as soon as he walked through the door. And since he rarely had a clue of what was going on in the office, the only thing he could really pick apart was us. At first, I took every criticism to heart. Naturally, I wanted to impress my boss, so I really took every comment personally. Fortunately, after my boss was reaming me out for making a mistake I didn't actually make, I realized that the title of manager did not equate infallible. And more importantly, that whatever he was saying had more to do with his performance than mine. From that point on, I always reminded myself that any sort of criticism in the office from a boss or anyone else should never be taken personally, if I could help it. Sure, sometimes criticism can be constructive, but other times it's pretty destructive. And if you can learn to look at things objectively rather than personally, it's a lot easier to keep your emotions intact and hopefully learn from the experience. It's okay to question authority. This probably sounds more like a bumper sticker you'll see on a college town, but it's also an important lesson I've learned from crappy bosses. For example, a while back I had a manager who really had no business managing anyone. She was in over her head and lacked the requisite experience to manage a team. But she was our manager, and I initially trusted that she must have some idea of what she was doing. Then one day we had a meeting with a client I worked with, and she gave him completely wrong information. I assumed she must have known something I didn't, and I let it go. Unfortunately, I was wrong and spent the next several weeks trying to unwind the tangle that she had put me in. I realized then that just because someone is in the position of authority doesn't mean he or she knows everything. From that point forward, I stopped assuming the title manager was equivalent to all knowing. Whenever I thought my boss might benefit from my knowledge or expertise, I didn't hesitate to offer up my thoughts on how we could approach the situation differently. After all, just because you're a few rungs below your boss on the corporate ladder, that doesn't mean you don't have valuable insight to contribute. Ask for what you want. I learned this one on my first job out of college. I had a boss who was notoriously absent and rumored to not actually know the names of everyone who worked for him. There were only 12 of us. Since this was my first job out of college, I obviously had a lot to learn and had assumed that along with knowing everything, because he's the boss, right? My boss also knew what I wanted and needed in my career. Review time rolled around and I excitedly awaited his feedback and crossed my fingers for a promotion. Unfortunately, while the feedback was stellar, the promotion was not part of the discussion. After our meeting, I headed back to my desk feeling pretty upset. A few weeks later, I had the opportunity to chat with the boss at an after-work function. Now, I'd had a few beers of courage first, so just so you know. I mustered up the courage to tell him I was hoping for a promotion, and he was shocked. He immediately asked me, "Well, why didn't you say anything?" While it would be nice if all our bosses naturally recognized our talents and rewarded us accordingly, sometimes bosses, especially the crappy ones, need it spelled out for them. If you think you're doing a bang-up job and deserve a raise, a promotion, or any sort of recognition, you need to be prepared to ask for it. Know your worth, be ready to make sure your boss knows it too, and you'll find your career a lot more fulfilling. Bad bosses are everywhere, unfortunately. But if you can see your terrible boss from a different perspective, you might just learn something valuable for him or her. Keep these 3 lessons in mind when coping with a crappy boss, and you're guaranteed to make some good out of the situation. Do you really need anyone to tell you that you're working for a bad boss? Probably not. But you may need confirmation and validation. Sometimes we are so in the thick of it and can't see the forest for the trees. When you live a situation 24/7, it gets hard to be objective. You may think you're right, but what if you're not? What if you've just become paranoid and think the boss is out to get you? Talk it over with a couple of trusted friends or colleagues that won't gossip. You don't want someone to slip up and let the boss know that you're questioning his leadership style. You've heard it countless times. Employees leave their managers, not the company. Is this true in your experiences? And if so, what qualities of a bad manager cause employees to quit? Kforce commissioned a nationwide survey to find out how 2,000 full-time office workers felt about their work. Nearly half, 43%, of the respondents said feeling appreciated from management is a top factor that would make them love their job, even more so than having a career path that was clearly laid out or making an impact in the job. Showing appreciation for employees seems relatively easy to do, yet so many managers fail in this area. When asked to give a percentage grade for the quality of their management team, 1 in 5 respondents of our survey between the ages of 39 and 54 gave managers a D or below. Here are some characteristics of a bad manager that will have employees running for the door and what you can do instead. You micromanage them. You're an alpha. You relish the idea of holding on to every single ounce of power possible. There's a certain way you want a job to be done. You better look over your employees' shoulders and ensure that they're doing everything right. Or perhaps you're insecure about your value to the organization. You remain firmly planted in the weeds so that you're always in the know and can demonstrate your value at any given moment. You manage every moment on your team, leaving no detail or question unanswered. Try this instead. Fearful managers can be the worst micromanagers. Remember, you hired your employee for a reason. They are skilled, they have bright ideas, and can be trusted. Let them figure things out without you guiding and dictating every step along the way. Ask more questions and give fewer answers. Encourage collaboration with their peers and inspire them to come up with ideas. Employees won't learn nearly as much in a stifling environment where every move is tracked. Give, give them freedom and watch them grow. You avoid talking about their career goals. Your employee deserves a promotion, but your hands are tied. You don't have the budget, and you can't make it happen. Not now. Avoid talking to them about their career goals. Just stick to talking about KPIs and whether their tasks are completed. It's just easier that way. Try this instead. Employees want to feel valued. And what better way to show them you're appreciated than to be supportive of their career goals? Encourage employees to work on different projects, take in enrichment opportunities, or help to redefine their roles to ensure they're fulfilled. Understand what drives your employees. Invest time asking thought-provoking questions, and then be quiet and listen to their answers. As managers, you don't need to pressure yourself to come up with all the answers. Employees will come to their own answers if you foster the environment for them to do so. You don't give feedback. You've asked your employee to create something, but then you completely redo it without telling them why. Providing detailed feedback is time-consuming, and you're a busy person. Plus, giving feedback can be so awkward, so it's just best to avoid it. Try this instead. It can be quite frustrating when your manager rewrites or redesigns something you've created and doesn't explain why. Without feedback, you don't know where you went wrong, so you don't know how to avoid it in the future. Don't pass up teaching opportunities. Slow down and discuss your comments, suggestions, and edits with your employee. Remember, you had to learn everything for the first time too. You steal their spotlight. Your team worked around the clock on a project, and it's a huge success. You love getting the glory, so you scoop up the spotlight without giving any credit to the people who made it happen. Try this instead. All of us want to be recognized for our achievements, so give credit where credit is due. Thanking your employees for investing their talent and time into their work is an effective way to make them feel appreciated. Giving authentic praise to your employees in front of their peers can go a long way as well. Plus, when your employees shine in the spotlight, so do you as their leader. You ignore workplace conflict. One of your employees is being passive aggressive, but you look the other way. You hate conflict and prefer to stay out of it. You've heard that your employee is gossiping and hurting morale, but you're unsure of what to do, so you do nothing. Try this instead. The employee experience rests heavily on your shoulders. As a manager, it's part of the gig. You need to protect your people from bullying, discrimination, and other threats to the safe and positive work environment. When a situation occurs, act swiftly and with empathy. Bring in your HR partner when appropriate and encourage an open door policy. Don't leave them out of the conversation. You make promises and hope your team can come through without asking for their input first. Your employees can survive a little stress, right? It will all work out, so why bother? They say measure twice, cut once, but pay no heed and shoot for the stars. Try this instead. Before finalizing your project plan, consult your team. As a manager, you're responsible for delegating work that can be achieved within your team's capabilities, budget, and time frame. Setting your team up for success means understanding the many factors that impact a project and helping each person contribute in the best possible way. When you overpromise and underdeliver, you make your whole team look bad. Understand what's required to get the job done and be reasonable. No one wants to fail. Including your team when creating your strategy, earning buy-in and alignment along the way will go far. You dominate every conversation. You're very busy and you've got to ensure you get your point across during team meetings. After all, you're the leader of the group with the most experience, so what's the harm in throwing your weight around sometimes? Try this instead. Be careful not to dominate a conversation with your ideas. When you monopolize a meeting, you prevent other ideas and solutions from surfacing, costing your team innovative solutions and new insights. Encourage your employees to contribute to the conversation, saying phrases such as, "I'd like to hear everyone weigh in on this issue. What do the rest of you think?" Be the manager your employees stick around for. None of us are born knowing how to inspire others to be their best. Being an inspiring leader is a choice, whether you are an informal leader or a formal one. Managing a team has its fair share of challenges, but you have the power to hold on to your top employees for years to come. If you're a people manager, you most likely have a lot on your plate. But just because you've been tapped to lead a team doesn't mean you don't have room to improve. In fact, constantly challenging yourself to improve is more important for you than ever, because now your team of employees are counting on you for coaching, guidance, mentorship, and advice. Most of these comments are aimed at the boss, but they prove the point of how people's minds work. Consider using the opportunity to have philosophical discussions with your boss and lay out some of the concepts listed here. Talk about a fictional boss or use another bad boss as an example to discuss behavior, especially if it directly affects your boss. As an administrative professional, knowledge is your superpower, and by steering conversations, you can sway your boss's mind without manipulation, intimidation, and bullying. Some bosses want you to treat them as your child, but please don't fall into that trap. I did it once, and it was suddenly my fault that he didn't go and get lunch, or when he finally got off the phone, his sandwich was cold. I believe the term used was kissing a dead skunk. So, because he had poor time management skills, I was to blame. So, no, I am not doing that again. So, in summary, a former boss used to say, "I can teach skills, but I can't teach attitude." And he was right. Sometimes a change in your thought process, validating with colleagues or family, and rethinking your part in a bad relationship with your boss may be all you need to turn it around. It also may not. You'll need to make the decision if the frustration is worth staying in the job. So that about does it for me today. I appreciate your taking the time to watch and listen to How to Deal with a Bad Boss, presented by Webinars by Rockwell. My contact information is provided on the last slide, and we hope you join us for another webinar soon. Bye for now.